Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to call the October 16, 2019 board meeting to order. And I'd like to start, I've been asked to remind everybody to turn their cell phones off or to silent. That came up last meeting, so I'll mention that. At this point, I would turn to Diana Putterwilds to lead us in prayer, followed by Buddy Dixon to lead us in the pledge.
Dear Heavenly Father, creator of all the heavens and earth, we thank you for blessing our lives by directing them in such a way that most of us are fortunate to have homes in Hot Springs Village. You have instructed us, Lord, to be stewards of the gifts you've bestowed upon us, to love one another and help one another, to share the story of salvation so that we may all be rewarded with a place in eternity. We come to you today seeking your wisdom and courage in the decisions we must make. We know you equip us with free will, and we pray that our will and yours be in sync and be pleasing to you. We ask for your continued guidance as we travel life's pathways. We ask that you keep us aware of ways to support and help each other. Please, dear Lord, restore the peace and love that once permeated this community and can do so again. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any special guests in the audience that would like to be recognized? Well, welcome everyone, and welcome to those of you who are watching live stream. At this point, I would call for a motion to approve the order of business.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the item under new business called proposed revisions to Governance Committee Charter be moved to current business.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you. Any other discussion of the order of business? All those in favor of the order of business as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion stands. The order of business is approved. Turning to the consent agenda, does any director want to move any item from the consent agenda to current or new business? Hearing none, then the consent agenda includes the September 19th regular meeting minutes, the October 3rd and October 8th executive session minutes, standing committee minutes, including the ACC September 19th minutes and October 3rd minutes, the CMP Advisory Committee August 9th minutes, the Governmental Affairs Committee minutes of September 6th, the Governance Committee minutes of September 17th, the Lakes Committee minutes of September 11th, Public Services Committee minutes of September 19th, Recreation Committee minutes of August 12th and September 9th, Trails Committee minutes of September 17th, the Ad Hoc 2020 Operating and Capital Budget Committee minutes of September 6th, September 13th, September 20th, September 27th, and October 4th, the appointment of Kenneth Gordon to the ACC, the appointment of Milton Barber and Stephanie Highfield to the Ad Hoc 50th Anniversary Planning Committee, the COO report, and the CMEO reports. I move to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the consent agenda is adopted. And now we'll turn to the CEO report.
Okay, well, first, I want to wish a belated happy birthday to Director Madika. Mike, happy birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mike. Happy birthday to you, and many more.
Cheers to that. Also, I want to wish the board a happy Bosses Day. Today is Bosses Day. I want to thank you for your leadership of this community. And with that, I'll go into my report. Liz will give you a more in-depth detail of our financial overview, but today, year-to-date, as of September, we have a net operating gain before capital and depreciation that's $74,000 more than the same time last year. Our membership equity remains strong and ahead of this time last year by $1.3 million. And at the current level, we expect to meet or exceed December 2018's membership equity amount of $73.6 million. On the Village Homes and Land side, and I will give I'll let everyone know, of course, Cheryl has already moved on to her new opportunity, and her last day in the office was last week. We will continue to work on closing out Village Homes and Land through the rest of this year, and but we'll continue to report on what the POA lot ownership program is doing. So for September, through September, there were 5 Builders Guild pre-sales closed and 1 is still under contract. There were 3 non-POA lots sold and 9 POA lots sold. 18 POA lots are under contract, expected to be closing here in the next couple of weeks. 3 existing homes have been sold, 2 are under contract, 88 referrals made to the Board of Realtors, and our buyers have come from Indiana, Alabama, Arkansas, California, Nevada, Maryland, Texas, and Florida. Throughout the community, other village real estate stats and information, new home permits are currently lagging behind last year. As of September, there were 39, and Buddy tells me, and Jack tell me that 44 as of today, new home permits, versus 52 this same time period last year. However, that is outpacing the previous 2 years, and actually the previous 6 years if you eliminate the commercial multi-unit housing projects in 2014 and 2015. So actual residential homes, home permits are up over the last 6 years. Also, existing home sales are outpacing the last 5 years. There have been 516 homes sold through September versus 470 sold the same time in 2018. As of the end of September, there were 230 homes listed compared to 407 in 2015 and 316 in 2016. So our real estate market remains strong, our property values remain up, and that's looking good. We are, as Jamie, Stephanie, and Kevin and I will be meeting with area realtors on October 28th, and I understand the Board of Realtors is extending our invitation, I think either today or tomorrow, but all realtors are invited to come and collaborate with us on a pilot program to replace Village Homes and Land. And I appreciate Deb Seibert for extending our invitation for us. And we look forward to strengthening our relationship with our area realtors and, of course, reaching our overarching goal of creating and protecting value through sustainable growth. On the marketing front, last week the board was briefed on the Hot Springs Village marketing plan, and you all indicated your general support of the guiding strategies while expressing a desire to build benchmarking tools to measure their effectiveness of our sales and marketing program. And if you'll recall, the call for a marketing plan was originally directed in the CEO's annual goals. We discussed it in your May retreat, and in each of the subsequent quarterly check-ins that I have with you all. So I want to express my appreciation for not only the current board but past board members, our Chief Member Experience Officer, our CMP Chairman Keith Keck, our CMP Advisory Committee Marketing Subcommittee Chair Pam Avila. Each of those two committees' members, the Director of Placemaking and Development Stephanie Heffer, Director of Tourism Kevin Sexton, Communications Manager Joseph Price, the Arkansas Department of Parks and Tourism, Godotti Communications, John Welsh of Great Destination Strategies, the 50th Anniversary Planning Committee, and several years of governmental affairs committee members, 2014, 2015, and 2016, come to mind because of their work on the 2016 Economic Impact Study, and of course various other POA employees and property owners who sought to influence our marketing efforts. And really, as you all heard, as the board heard in our meeting last week or a week or so ago, the Marketing Plans Foundation revolves around the association's mission and our vision to be America's premier active lifestyle community, and our value statements, as well as our tagline, "The Place to Live Your Dreams." Now that tagline mirrors an initiative launched a few years back by a group known as Friends of Hot Springs Village. So really, I guess what I'm saying is this plan comes on the shoulders of numerous talented individuals, and in my opinion, begins to bring clarity and focus to the Hot Springs Village brand and brand promise. As I mentioned to you, our aim with that plan is to deliver a distinct and recognizable Hot Springs Village experience from gate to gate. You see in my report the long-term objectives of that plan. I won't go back over those with you. Now, Jamie gave, subsequent to our meeting, as some of you probably know, Jamie gave the CMP Advisory Committee and the Marketing Subcommittee an overview and details of that full plan last week. There are a couple of videos out there that of those meetings, and she will continue to work with those committees to perform routine plan evaluations, keep us grounded in best practices, and track meaningful benchmarks. As she mentioned, this was a ground zero fluid plan that was intended to stay responsive to market conditions within the community marketing. By that I mean Hot Springs Village as a community, the community marketing, and or amenity-specific arenas required to meet our purpose. I've attached in my report that full plan. I'm expecting additional feedback from the CMP Advisory Committee and their subcommittee following their November meeting. I'll keep you all advised of any strategic level updates that we choose to make throughout the year. And we'll continue talking about those benchmarking tools and incorporate the pilot realtor program once those are finalized. So we look forward to putting this new and improved tools in the hands of our residents, because as we know, they are our best marketing tool. We want to make sure they're fully equipped to share these experiences, authentic experiences with their friends and family. And with that, that's my report.
Okay, any comments?
I have a question. What's the total dollar amount of expense items that were budgeted for 2019 that have not yet been expended?
I would say if you look on on page 9 of the financial report, you have this information each month. Page 9 is the comparative statement of revenues and expense.
Page 11 actually breaks it down. We've got department budget quarterly report.
Yep, and page 11 has it by department. But to answer your question in total, we have spent year-to-date operating expense-wise $22 million. We've budgeted $32 million. And you can see where those things fall out.
So of this amount that has not been spent yet, how much do you expect to have to push into 2020? I need to
Would this
restate
be-
that
Would this
question.
be appropriate in the financial report, possibly?
Well, it was stated in the CEO report, on the first page of the CEO report.
Oh, okay, all right.
You said you needed to restate it?
I said, what effect does the expense amount, if we have budgeted $32 million in expense, and we spent $22 million through September 30th, that's 3/4 of the year. How much of that $10 million remaining do you expect to spend in the fourth quarter versus push into 2020?
So I think if you look on page 15 of Liz's financial packet, that kind of gives you a breakdown of what's expected to be spent, right? And what's expected to be yielded from that. I think the only thing currently, if I'm just kind of summarizing off the top of my head, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong. The only thing currently that we are looking to push into 2020 would be the things in public services, the one road.
There's $450,000, which is on the budget as a rollover of operating expenses. And that's really the only thing that we've got planned right now.
Okay, so we have no factor into a budgeted employee that we didn't hire this year. So the expenses for that were budgeted for this year, but we didn't recognize them and will not recognize them until next year.
So I mean, I see where you're going with that question. It's getting a little down into the individual items. On one hand, yes, we have a budgeted employee, let's say one. We actually have several, as you know, who weren't filled. Those expenses won't be paid. We also have a miss in revenue on golf, and we have some other misses. So if we're talking about overall, I mean, basically what the board, right, but basically what the board asks me to do is to manage to a bottom line. So what I would expect is that at the end of the day, the only thing we're carrying over is that $450, and we may or may not spend some of the rest of that money.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the CEO report? I wanted to make a comment with regard to marketing. I guess I'd like to reiterate the board's interest, or at least my interest, let me just speak for myself, to see the marketing plan evolve as staff and committee collaboration matures and as the new marketing manager is assimilated into the team whenever that person is hired. So we look forward to that evolving over time. Okay. Very good, thank you. So the board receives the report as presented and we turn to Liz and the CFO report. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll start with me on page 2. I'm going to kind of run through these elements as we get to them. The first element here of our statement of financial position is our cash, of course. Our total cash and cash equivalents has an increased $424,000 over the prior year. That includes spending $513,000 of the bond funds last year. So if you take that out of the equation, it's even a more significant increase. Our assessments, receivable, and looking at our bad debt, we've been watching that trend, but we do have, overall, the number of delinquent properties has decreased by 110 since December 2018. Our in-house team and our third-party collection efforts and our legal efforts continue in all of those areas trying to address that bad debt. Long-term debt has decreased $765,000 since this time last year, and our overall liabilities have decreased by $278,000 since the prior year. Kind of the differential there, those two, a few months ago, we refinanced those 3 sanitation trucks. They were on a lease program, and we actually financed them. So that's a little bit of a shift of how that's showing up on our balance sheet versus in our P&L. Overall, as Leslie talked about, our property owner equity has increased $1.3 million over the prior year. On page 3, operational revenue is down $173,000 from the prior year, but operating expenses are down $303,000, which is a kind of a net decrease of $129,000. Net assessments are trending a little bit behind the prior year, $55,000. That's related to an increase in bad debt, not necessarily the assessment revenue themselves. So our total net excess deficit before depreciation is an increase of $74,000 over the prior year.
Liz,
Yes.
maybe it's covered, you're gonna cover it later. Of that $300,000 of decreased operating expense, do you offhand know how much of that can be attributed to the changes we made in the golf area and expenses?
I think if you will look at page 9, under golf expenses, they're down $157,000 from the previous year.
So about half of it. Great, thanks.
So on our revenue, overall, administration, public safety, public works, lakes, food and beverage, and recreation are all showing an increase in revenue over the prior year. Our net revenue is 66% of our budget. We're 75% of the way through the year, and $74,000 more than 2018. Leslie talked a little bit about some of these community development metrics. There's been 41 new improved properties since December 2018. So we talked a little bit about permits, but we also then talked about how many have moved from an unimproved status to an improved status, which is more when the house is constructed and built. Discovery packages, we have 61 have been completed at the end of September. I know they've got more than that booked still through the end of the year, with a total conversion rate of 10.2% over the life of our Discovery package program. On page 4, talk a little bit about some more revenue here. Again, utilities, we're looking at only 7 months out of 12 on the revenue side, but they are trending about $148,000 below the previous year. That's not new. We've been looking at that for several months now. Golf revenue, still down for the year, but in September, they made up 2,755 rounds over what they did in September of last year. So as our weather has improved this year, we're closing the gap a little bit on in golf in that area.
Can I roll back a second? There's a question I wanted to ask. 10.2% conversion rate Discovery packages. Can you define for me what qualifies as a conversion?
Becoming a property owner.
So, and how they became a property owner, whether they bought a lot from us or bought a lot from one of the people in the village, that's...
Yes, we're looking at
You're paying an assessment of some kind.
yeah, we're looking at not just through Village Homes and Lands lot sales, but at what we have from our main office and how many people have actually purchased property.
So if I had a lot that I was currently paying assessment on, and I sold it to you, would that be in that package?
If you came in on a Discovery package first to find the community, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing, we're running about 800 rounds more this year in October already than we did last year. I said we're running about 800 rounds more in October this year than we were doing last year. So we are making up some ground late in the year thanks to a lot of good weather.
Well, and we've got charts that show rainfall, and we had a really wet last half of last year, and we had a really wet first half of this year. And so hopefully we're seeing that trend change for the rest of this year and continue to see some improvement in that area over the next couple of months. And then again, those golf package rounds remain up from the previous year. In other revenue, some of these notes are not new. They've been here for a little while, but I just kind of wanted to call out our recreation department. Their revenue continues to show an increase from the prior year and is on target to meet their budgeted revenues. In outdoor recreation, the RV park, pickleball, Coronado tennis, DeSoto Marina, the fitness center, and the Pont Center, they've all increased their revenue over the prior year. And so I just wanted to kind of shout out to Stacy and her team. I know they've worked really hard to try to move the needle there. On our expense side, year-to-date, administration, community development, and marketing, public works, and golf all show reduced operating expenses from the prior year. Public safety is up, but that's related to compensation increases and some non-CLAP equipment purchases earlier this year. And then in public works, their expenses remain below the previous year, but as we've talked about, that's some timing differences in the public services area and what we're looking at rolling over some of that. Public utilities is an increase from the prior year related to increases in both maintenance expenses and utility costs. But Jason and them have been working really hard to get those lift stations up and running, and so they're getting pretty close to meeting that goal, and the expenses have kind of gone up as a result of trying to take care of all those and get them done.
Lakes expenses have increased because we're finishing up dredging on Lake Balboa. That was a planned expense increase for this year. And expenses at most food and beverage locations have actually decreased from the prior year, but the overall increase is related to operating DeSoto Club that we were not operating a full year in 2018. So when you look at those year-over-year comparisons, you know, we have had some changes in operations and what we're looking at. Recreation expenses have also increased related to utility costs at all facilities, but particularly the fitness center. And it's not just electric, it's also propane and some other areas. Utility costs overall have gone up. Total operational expense is about 68% of the budget and $303,000 less than 2018. Capital spending, we've spent about 38.5% of our capital budget year to date. Cash flow wise, we tend to always have some that we're doing later in the year, and then there might possibly be some capital that ends up rolling over depending on year-end operating results. We always kind of end up in that situation where maybe we didn't get an opportunity to finish some capital projects, or we're waiting to see how much, if we come in better than we plan on our net operating results, then we can move some of that stuff back in that maybe we're holding on. We do know that the pool probably won't be 100% complete by December 31st, so we know there will be some capital rolling over. The back part of the packet, there is a quarterly departmental overview report that kind of breaks down each of our 76 departments. I'm on page 7 just looking at a summary of that. In the first quarter, 33 out of 76 departments, which is 43%, are showing a total net improvement, which includes capital, over the prior year. Those 33 departments include 1 out of 3 in the administration division, 3 in the innovation division, 3 in public safety, 5 in food and beverage, 3 in recreation, 10 in golf, 4 in public works, and 3 in public utilities. So I think everybody's doing a great job really trying to manage to that bottom line and make sure we're showing some improvements here. I laid out for you some of the areas here where there were increases over the previous year, specifically the ones that were over $50,000. You'll see several of these here are golf shops, and that's where our golf revenue is. So there's some variances there that we've been talking about on a larger scale, but you can see it on the departmental level. One of the, there's a few departments, land acquisitions is one of them, that it looks, when you look at it from a prior year perspective, it looks a little different because the majority of the department's expenses were in a different department in the prior year. We couldn't break them out on a prior year basis. So there's some variances there that just show based on us breaking things out a little bit different this year. They're not necessarily increases in expenses over the year. Talked about outdoor recreation. There's an increase in the capital expenses related to the bocce courts. Ponds in the center and the woodlands has some increased capital, and I kind of gave you some breakout numbers on some of that. And the ground maintenance was another new division, which is combining several divisions and moving some stuff around that we kind of broke that out a little bit clearer in 2019. So those year-over-year comparisons are a little harder to look at. And then we can go to that very last page, page 15, which is our reconciliation of projected cash usage. This is where Leslie was kind of pointing us a little bit earlier. Overall, this talks about where we're at on our cash position and where we're at with planned capital spending and net operating results. All of that kind of figuring in together, and are we going to be in a cash position just based on this year's operations to fund our reserves and possibly any rollovers. And right now we are looking at that $450,000 rollover plus our ability to meet reserves. Any questions?
I have a question regarding page 15. You'd have to look back at last month's, but you have a line on here that is called estimating remaining cash yield from operations. And this month, that amount is $1,265,653. And in August, that amount is $454,387. So it went up nearly 3 times. What's the explanation of that?
Some of it's just so, as we're working through these projections and looking at whether we're spending in capital or
in operating. I've really spent some time working with some of the departments, working on what their capital spending is looking like and working through some of those revenue projections, especially as we work through the budget. We really dug into some of those forecasts a little bit differently.
Well, if I go back and look at that thing you've been doing this since March, that number just bounces all over the world map. And the same way with the estimated cash available for reserves at year end, which I can understand that, because as you have a greater experience factor, you can get closer to what you think the actual number is going to be. But even on that number, at the end of September, you project that at 921,000 and change, and at the end of August, you projected it at 472,000, a 50% increase in 1 month's time.
Well, that's the $450,000 that we then realized we weren't gonna spend in 2019. That's figuring into that very clearly.
That's going to be spent in 2020.
Yes, we're rolling that money into the 2020 budget. And so as we work through that budget process and looked at the timing of some of this spending, that has changed.
I would say also too, you have to look at the other lines on here, because another thing that flip-flops pretty significantly, for instance, is the outstanding accounts payable, the outstanding accounts receivable. So you have to look at them all in tandem, as either we've billed for something and now we have better information on the utility billing, and that becomes money that we know is going to be collected. So each of those lines work together, but the biggest item is what Liz just mentioned, in that now we know we're rolling something over instead of spending it this year.
So Liz, then, from what I just heard said, the estimated cash available for reserves at the year end really hasn't changed from last month, because we're rolling it over. Money was somewhere else.
That's right.
So we're running basically right at the number we were hoping to have available last month for reserves of $469,000 or $70,000.
Plus $450,000 that we're looking to roll into 2020 and that comes directly from that cash yield from operations. We're not going to be spending it in the operations in 2019,
Yeah,
and it will be available to roll into the operations for 2020.
okay.
But the cash yield went up 3 times the number, almost 300%. I mean, and the other only goes up 49%. It's just incongruent to me. I just can't see it. What I said was that the cash yield is going up, almost 300%, 3 times as much. And yet the bottom line is we're not going to spend $450,000, so we got a 50% increase in how much cash is going to be available at the end of the year. I'm lost in this forecast. I mean, this forecast is just, it doesn't help me.
I think one of the reasons that I personally had a hard time publishing a cash flow forecast or anything like that throughout the year is because it does move up and down. We have a lot of different seasonal operations with different seasons and dynamics there, and it moves all the time. And so maybe one thing to consider is maybe we look at this quarterly versus monthly, because you'll get some better tracking on it that way versus seeing this yo-yo effect that is affected by so much of the seasonality of our businesses.
I think that's an excellent point. Thank you.
I would say too, to do it along the lines of when the utility bills happen. So we also have a clear number of what's been billed, right? Yeah.
Well, that gets me into my other thing. I still don't understand, and every month I say the same thing. Why aren't we doing adjusting entries and accruing for that revenue in the month that we earn it?
We could, Diana, but one of the things that it really helps from a management perspective and the staff is to understand our cash flows better throughout the year. And so if we start getting that accrual, then when we are looking at that cash flow, it looks like we have money that we're not actually going to receive for a month and a half. And so from a management perspective throughout the year, it's a lot easier to keep up with when the timing of when cash is coming in for our team than if we start accruing it. So that's why we only do that accrual at the end of the year. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, and this is something that, again, I've talked to the board about several times. Even back when I was the CFO, right? At the point that we were doing a lot of accruals, a lot of adding labor amounts to capital, we did not understand our financial position. we were having to cash in investments because we were surprised. We were having to cash in investments the first month I got here because we were surprised. We thought we had money, but we didn't. So I think it's a method of cash flow management, and if the board would like to see us change that, then, let us know.
Well, I'm not sure that you should change it, but I think to Diana's point, and actually my feelings also, it's easy to get confused with accruals. And sometimes you can think you're in great shape, and at the end of the day, find out things aren't quite that good. But it's also very hard for us that aren't buried inside accounting to understand these numbers sometimes when they've got the accruals coming in, going out. Is there some easier way to make it more explainable so we don't have to ask all the questions at these meetings or some other time as to what the real cash flow may be?
One of the things I would say is, I like what Liz talked about, the quarterly statement, but unless you're in the details of it, you're gonna ask these questions, and we would expect them, and that we're okay with that. We're okay with you saying, I don't understand what I'm looking at, or this is not making sense. That challenges us. So I think there's a combination of, continue asking the questions and let us continue to dig into the details on a daily basis, and hopefully together we'll come out with the right answers.
Yes, we'll continue.
Anybody else have any comments about the CFO report? I would like to, ask a question about the remaining, same page, page 15, remaining 2019 budgeted capital and capital rollover. So if I'm reading the exhibits correctly, it looks like we have about $3.4 million remaining in approved capital expenditures for the year. But in this report, we're predicting that we're going to spend 2.2 million of that 3.4. And that is from the September exhibits. From the August exhibits, that said 2.7, and from the July exhibits, it said 3.9 million. So I'm wondering about that change month over month over month, because knowing no better, it looks to me like that is shrinking by design so that in anticipation that some of the expenditures will carry over to the next year, which relieves this year's budget, which allows us to fund reserves and meet all of our other expectations.
I think there's been some changes, and there's a little bit, some of the stuff that was budgeted, say the golf carts, for instance. We budgeted in capital because it is kind of a capital item, but we lease it. And so you're not going to see the spending come as one lump sum amount on the capital. It moves into operations. So there's some shifts there that happen. As we go through the year, we also come in under budget in some areas. Maybe we got a better deal on some things. Maybe we've got some things that may or may not need to be spent based on future plans. There's a lot of different variables that go into that. I've actually got most of our teams right now really digging into their capital to help me figure out exactly where they're at on timing of some of these, because some of them we may not have enough time to finish them this year too. So there's a lot of different elements playing. I think it's the same as the forecasting conversation on the other side. And then there's some areas where we've held spending right now to see where our operating results come in. If we can get operating results a little bit better, then that starts to shift that dynamic.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm wary of is that to be in a pattern where we establish and approve a budget for a year only to find at the end of the year that we're not able to meet our revenue expectations and we're pushing things to the subsequent year. And at some point, that pattern has to stop, right? I mean, we've got to be able to spend what we expect we need to spend from a capital perspective.
And I think when we get to a place where we're no longer building reserves and we're using our reserves differently, then that will become that story for us. But right now, we're still in this trying to fund our capital spending out of each year's operating revenue, net excess, and add the reserves, and so that makes it more challenging to balance that.
Well, I'm not suggesting that this is what I'm getting ready is going on, because I don't know. But what would bother me is if in a given year, we don't have enough money at the end of the year to do some capital expenditure, so we move that capital expenditure into the next year, where there's a likelihood that we won't have the money again, and I think that's what Cindy was talking to. We just keep kicking that can down the road to eventually, the can's bigger than my foot will kick.
Well, I'd like to say to that it doesn't matter whether you classify it as capital or expense. We're talking, the same thing. It's money going out. And, it doesn't do any good if you put it into your reserve account, which would be my savings account for an individual. And then I turn right around, I put it in December, and I turn right around and start taking it out in January, February, and March. I still have no nest egg. I still have no cushion.
Yeah, and I would say this is the reason why the enterprise goal, the equity enterprise goal, and the not decapitalizing asset enterprise goal is so important, because it is a moving target. We won't ever stop it fully unless we have more money than, we're not gonna have more money than we know how to spend, than we can spend, for many, many years, right? We have way more to do than the money that we'll ever have. So those two measurements are very important, because as we're making decisions about what to hold or what not to hold, we still have to make sure the value is maintained. As weather hits, or we're off on golf revenue, or whatever happens, we still have to make sure that that value is maintained, and that's the reason why they're so important.
Any other comments on the CFO report?
The only thing I want to say is to that is, yeah, I understand that, Leslie, but you're talking of balance sheet items, you're talking things that are as of one point in time instead of over a period of time. And it still goes back to Tormy's comment and Cindy's comment that, if we're putting it here and we're taking it out here, we're spinning our wheels.
I think it's pretty clear to most of the people on the board, if not all of us, that the revenue coming in the door is not necessarily equal to what needs to go out the door. And sometimes these moves from one set place to another complicate our ability to maybe sometimes explain it to ourselves, but also explain it to the public so that they can understand that you can't do everything with at least the revenue line we've got at the moment.
Any other comments on the CFO report?
Thanks, Liz.
So the board receives the report from Liz for our financial report. Thank you. And at this point, we'll turn to current business. At this point, we would invite the public to provide their comments to the board with regard to the budget only. If I can have the board, I'll call up those of you who indicated that you'd like to speak on the budget. We're going to do things just a little bit differently this time. We're still going to stick with the 3-minute rule. Thank you. We're going to stick with the 3-minute rule. However, the buzzer will go off at 2 minutes and 45 seconds so that you can gracefully conclude your comments and not just abruptly get the book and shuffled off to the side. So we think that's maybe an improvement, and we'll see, and off we go. So first one up, Donna Elwood. Oh,
May I make a comment?
sure.
Bear with me. I've got 2 different timers here, so if it doesn't work out, I'm sorry. I'm not giving you the hook.
Okay. Very good. Donna Elwood, we'll call you up. She representing the rec committee, and she has some comments about the budget.
Morning. Thank you. Am I on? Now I'm on. Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board today. I'm Donna Aylward. I'm chair of the Recreation Committee. I live at 73 Loyola Drive. This year, with a continued downward trend of annual pass sales at the fitness center, 225 in 2017, 223 in 18, 194 in 19, and significant community interest in the offerings at the fitness center, a subcommittee was formed to research revenue options for the CFC. An online survey of paying members, non-members, and insurance reimbursement users was conducted. Roundtable discussions of the members of these groups were also held. At the same time, as always been the case, the Recreation Subcommittee on Fees began this discussion on fees related to rec amenities for 2020. Feedback from surveys was consistent. Cost for annual membership was too high compared to the competition. Users who pay on average do not use the facility more than 5 to 6 months a year at 10 usages a month due to travel, living here part-time, or wanting to use outside amenities for exercise during nice months. The Fitness Revenue Committee, working with the Fees Subcommittee and based on community input, recommended to hold prices firm for the daily and 30-day rate, but recommend a significant reduction in the annual fee from $490 to $350 in order to encourage annual memberships. Additionally, the committee recommended a rolling 12-month option so an individual could become a new member at any time of the year, retaining that membership for the next 12 months. Months of input by the community and community work went into these committee work went into these recommendations. I might also say they were supported by Stacy Hoover, Director of Recreation, who evidently, according to Liz today, has delivered her revenue projections for 2019. The past Friday, much to the committee's surprise, during the final budget meeting, at the last 3 minutes of the meeting, a recommendation by Director Loring, liaison to the Recreation Committee, was made to hold fees at $490. On a regular basis, the Recreation Committee has 2 to 4 subcommittees working on projects. I attempt to attend all subcommittee meetings, even though I serve on a variety of boards and committees in the community, as well as maintain a full-time job. I have never observed Director Loring at a single subcommittee meeting, and definitely not at the fees or revenue committees when I was in attendance. She recommended rates remain at the higher rate with absolutely no discussion. Very concerning to me that the committee and Director of Recreation were so disrespected. In Stacy Hoover's presentation during the rec budget presentation on the first day of the budget review, she stated that we only need 47 new members from a pool of over 15,000 residents at the $350 rate to reach this year's revenue for annual passes. Additionally, her projections and budget revenue presentation too on the first day of the budget presentation was with the lower fee showed annual revenue at $1,169,000. But annual revenue projected in budget 4, which you will vote on today, indicates a lower revenue projection of $1,130,000, $39,000 less. It is recognized by the subcommittee that there is a need for marketing to members, which is also now being recommended. I know that this is an entire committee is represented by this conversation.
I understand.
We
Thank you.
believe leaving this rate at $490 will continue the downward trend of annual memberships, resulting in lower revenue. I would ask on behalf of the committee that you reconsider
Thank you, Donna.
this disappointing recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Kastler, Ron Kastler.
Thanks, Cindy, for letting me make my presentation at this point of the agenda. My name is Ron Kastler. I live at 8 Ponce de Leon Circle. My formal training is in finance. Because of my success, I was appointed to a corporate finance committee of a company that was rated at 100 in the list of 500 Fortune 500 companies. The company manufactured household consumer products. In addition to our responsibilities, the corporate CFO challenged each member of the finance committee to make a suggestion that would increase corporate profits. The suggestion had to meet 4 criteria. The first criteria was it had to be very measurable. Secondly, it had to increase income. Next, it had to decrease expenses. And last, it had to be very easy to implement. With that in mind, I have 3 suggestions. My first suggestion is to freeze the wages of the 50 most highly compensated POA employees for not less than 3 years. This includes the CEO and the next 49 highly compensated employees. My second suggestion is to eliminate all bonuses for all POA employees for not less than 3 years. This includes the CEO and everybody else. The first suggestion would impact 50 of the 285 full-time employees and decrease our total compensation expenses by over $100,000 a year. The second suggestion is to eliminate all bonuses, would further reduce our total compensation expenses by an additional $50,000 a year. $50,000 plus $100,000 is $150,000 a year. For 3 years is $450,000. My third suggestion is to establish a golf fee surcharge of $1. If we had 200,000 rounds in a year, that's $200,000. For 3 years, that's $600,000. When you combine the $600,000 with the $450,000, you have a favorable impact on the budget of over $1 million. These suggestions are very easy to implement by the POA board without input from the CEO. All that is needed is for one board member to make a motion, another board member to second the motion, and the remaining board members to raise their hand and carry the motion. This motion will demonstrate to all POA members that the elected board members have this authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Kurt Dinger wanted to address the board regarding the budget.
Congratulations to the management's Congress of New Urbanism's comprehensive master plan of indoctrinating or eliminating board of directors who refuse to be indoctrinated. Particularly noteworthy of the new Vote 3 directors, one who campaigned that he could slash...
Madam Chairman, this is supposed to be on the budget. If you can't talk about the budget, go to the next person.
Kurt, I asked you and you said this was about the budget and this is how you signed up.
This is my next sentence, is about the budget.
Okay. Only about the budget. That's the purpose of this time. Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. One who campaigned that he could slash $3 million of expenditures from the budget is now delivering a budget higher than any other budget in Hot Springs Village history. And also voted to allow the governance committee to continue to operate in violation of the bylaws.
Is there anything regarding the budget that you have to say?
That's all.
Thank you, Kurt. We have Jeff, someone who did not indicate the reason for his speaking. Jeff, is it about the budget?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we'll catch you in the second section.
Okay,
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 11, in the current business, bylaws revision proposed by Ad hoc Governing Documents Review Committee. Director Loring, please.
Thank you. I move to approve bylaw revisions proposed by the Ad hoc Governing Documents Review Committee as presented to assure compliance with Arkansas law as it relates to record inspection and copying by members.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Loring, speak to the motion.
At the September 19th, 2019 regular meeting, the Ad hoc Governing Documents Review Committee presented recommended revisions to the bylaws which assure compliance with Arkansas law as it relates to records inspection and copying by members. A redline version of the recommended revisions is attached.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
During our 30-day period, we brought this up as new business last month, so it's current business to be voted on this month. And normally during that time is a time for membership comment. And we had received, you shared with us a letter that you had received, I think it went to Cindy, I don't know, that went into pretty great detail about the references to any member, and the verbiage there. I had asked whether or not your committee had a chance to take that into consideration, and the last I knew was that, no, you hadn't taken that into consideration yet.
I did include, I believe, the board in the email to the rest of the committee, which was Buddy, Mike Mish, and Kathy Miramontes. I have heard from Buddy, and I've heard from Mike Mish, but I have not heard from Kathy Miramontes on the issue. Mike felt that what we did was fine. Buddy felt with what we did was fine. Our purpose was to definitely bring it into compliance with that ruling. Now, if there is an issue with that, I'm happy to entertain that. We're not just married to those changes. It's what we came up with, as simply and as comprehensively as possible.
Thank you.
I do have another motion, if I might, and it's really a typo. It's under Article 3. I won't give the background just yet. I move to delete the number 4 after the word section in Article 3 membership, Section 5, and replace with the number 5. It's a typo.
Is there a second? Yes, we have a second. Any discussion on the typo change? Okay, all those in favor of correcting the typo, say yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Any opposed? Okay, that motion stands.
thank you.
Any other discussion on the main motion? If not, all those in favor of the main motion, which is to approve the bylaw revisions proposed by the Ad hoc Governing Documents Review Committee as presented to assure compliance with Arkansas law as it relates to records inspection and copying by the members. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? The motion stands. Is approved. Very good. Okay, next item. The 2020 budget fee schedule. I understand Director Dixon will be making this motion today.
I move to approve the 2020 budget and fee schedule. This is vision number 4, which includes the 2020 enterprise goal, a CPI increase to assessments of 1.1%, year 5, 500,000 of the 3 million water plant payback from public utilities over 6 years, a 2% budgeted staff merit increase for pay grades 5 through 9, budgeted increases for pay grades 2 to 4 to accommodate new minimum wage rates, 3% utility rate increase, 2.7% sanitation rate increase, increase to road maintenance expenses of $500,000 from escrow funds for culvert repairs, and a $450,000 rollover from the 2019 street maintenance budget. 2020 fees as noted on pages 56 through 80, which include but are not limited to the following highlights: increased motorized boat fees to $75, increased private golf cart fees to $550, increased to 30-day golf passes, new additional golf pass program trial, a $2.50 golf surcharge to be designated for golf reserves, no rate change for the fitness, tennis, or RV, change to fitness annual form from calendar year to 12-month rolling, increased indoor pool fee to $4, and increased P&I and utility connection fees.
Okay, very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, the main motion has been moved and seconded, and we'll open it up for discussion. Who would like to be recognized first? Nancy.
I would like to amend the motion. The motion I move, because of the 2020 golf revenue round is projected to increase by over 15% over 2019, while both member and guest golf fees remain flat, I move all budgeted funds available for non-utility reserves be used to reduce the golf revenue forecast.
Is there a second?
I second.
We have a second. Open for discussion. Nancy, speak to the motion first.
A budget which predicts a 15% increase in revenue for a golf round with no fee increases and with a projected decrease in higher revenue guest rounds as a percent of the total doesn't seem achievable. And because policy-directed non-utility reserve levels have already been achieved for 2020, the $189,573 currently identified as available for non-utility reserves is better applied to reducing the golf revenue forecast for 2020.
Okay. Any other discussion points?
I have a discussion point. We don't know that we have already achieved the non-utility reserves because we still have 3 months of the year left. Doing this with this manner and having this that means that we have absolutely no cushion in next year. We take away 100% of our cushion. And for that reason, I'm not voting right now.
Well, if, first, the 189,573 is actually in next year's budget, and the expectation that that'll be the reserve left if all the expenses fall in line and the revenue in the budget falls in line. So therefore, that's what we're moving. With respect to your comment, you're absolutely correct. We don't know where the year is gonna end, but if we use that as a basis, we could never approve a budget until the year was over.
We are constantly, every meeting that we have had on this budget has been revenue driven. It's all revenue, revenue, revenue. And the only control that we have over revenue is what we set the fees at. Okay, the assessment is set in stone. We can't do anything about that. The only thing we get on that is the CPI. Pennies. The only other thing we set is our fee structure. And then we have to hope that it comes. We have to hope that we have golfers. We have to hope that we have pickleball players. We have to hope that we have people renting our facilities and attending our concerts and et cetera, and coming to the fitness center. Everything will go on. We don't talk at all about expenses, which is the other side of the equation. And to put us in a situation where we leave no cushion, I think is extremely harmful. And we've been meeting on this at hours, for hours and hours and hours, and this comes to us as a last-minute, last-ditch effort that the public were not even aware of.
All budgets for future time frames are always set on some level of expectation, both in expense and revenue. And when they aren't met, and now let's look back, adjustments have to be made. As an example, let's assume we approved whatever the budget is for 2020, and when we find out at the end of 2019 that we didn't meet our reserve requirements, as an example, or we didn't meet some other important item that we thought we had to accomplish. That means then we have to go into the next year's 2020 budget and make some kind of adjustment so that we can make up the difference.
And yes, but when we pass a budget, we pass the budget with a simple majority. And when we make changes to the budget, our budget policy says that we have to have a supermajority. So now it makes it even more difficult to be reactive and proactive. All we're doing here is just saying, okay, let's pass a spending plan and let's go forward. And let's face reality.
So, given what you just said, and understanding it's hard to modify the budget after it's been approved, because it does take 5 today, what would you suggest we do?
I would suggest,
Let's keep it
I
on
don't
the
think we
motion.
want to go
We
there.
need to
We're
keep
looking
it
at
on
the motion.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that we do not pass this motion.
Okay.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Well, we'll discuss the budget in total. This is just, we're on the motion itself, just constrained by the motion. If anybody else would like to speak to the motion.
I feel pretty much the same way what she said. You know, you look at golf for the last 3 months, we are overachieving what we did last year. So I think you always have years that are going to be bad. But I don't think they're going to come in consecutive years very often. So I think the budget that was put together for golf is probably pretty good. I think we'll come very close to realizing it, and they got some ideas on other things that'll help us there too. You know, we can always adjust. A budget is something to go by. It's not hard and fast that, you know, if we don't achieve that number, get rid of everybody. You do what you have to do, but you don't do it until maybe the time arises that you want to think about it some more. You know, it's just, I'm not sure I can support any changes this late. I would have rather had some discussions on things like this earlier, and the same goes for the natatorium. I don't use the natatorium, but, you know, it sounds to me like a lot of work went into that. And, you know, I think that we ought to accede to the wishes that people that spend a lot of time on it came up with.
Okay, we need to stay on the motion, for sure. Anybody else want to speak to the motion itself? Buddy? Nancy? Okay. All right, so all those in favor of the motion that says, because 2020 golf revenue per round is projected to increase by over 15% over 2019, while both member and guest golf fees remain flat, the motion is to move that all budgeted funds available for non-utility reserves be used to reduce the golf revenue forecast. Those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no.
No.
No. The motion fails.
Point of order. Sorry about this. On myself, but also on the audience. Arkansas state law states that you cannot disrupt a public meeting, so please refrain from applauding. Please refrain from this.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on the main motion for the budget?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I have a second motion regarding this, amending the previous or original main motion. In order to provide a measure of relief to golf revenue requirements in 2020, I move that staff be directed to operate no more than 7 out of 8 golf courses each day during 2020 on a rotational basis.
Is there a second? All right. Is there background, Nancy?
Having one of the 8 courses closed on any given day is expected to save at least $100,000 in 2020. This reduction in expense should be mirrored by a reduction in the revenue forecast, leaving projected golf subsidization unaffected. It is believed that if done on a predictable and rotational basis, the negative impact to food and beverage will be limited and golf revenue will not suffer, as golfers will still play on courses that remain open.
Is there any discussion on that motion?
Yes, I have discussion. Once again, this was a last-minute, last-ditch effort, which I'm not pleased with. But my biggest problem that I have with this is the background of any given day. I could go along with this motion if we were talking Sunday through Thursday. I cannot accept having a golf course closed on a Friday or Saturday. I believe that that causes our restaurants to take a hit on Friday and Saturday nights. Friday is the absolutely most popular day of golf. I have experienced difficulties getting a decent tee time on a Friday with every golf course open at times. That's when our packages come in, for the most part. I ran into a group of 27 guys that were here from Texas. They come here every year at this time. They book their own thing. They don't go Discovery. They do it all on their own. They call it their little masters, and they come here every year to play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Would you like to make a motion to amend this?
Okay, I could amend this that every golf course.
I'm sorry.
No, I can't do that.
Oh, we can only handle one motion at a time, and there's one on the table right now. So we need a resolution for that one.
Oh, okay, very good, all right.
And
Is there a
one
way
other
to-
comment that I have is that I do believe that food and beverage would be affected. And I do believe that a number of our we only have 2 Magellan, there's a deli, but restaurants, full-serve restaurants. We have 2 full-serve restaurants that we're responsible for, and that would be the DeSoto and Granada. And we have leased restaurants that are affected by this closing. And one of the things we put into the food and beverage plan was that we're gonna start having DeSoto and Granada open on a Sunday night. Well, I just think that we just kill them if the golf course is closed on a Sunday.
Okay, I have a question to the parliamentarian. Is there a way for this motion to be restated in a way that might be more agreeable here that we could consider?
Can I say something first? I mean, the golf department already looks at those situations, and they do close courses if we don't have a lot of play. Yeah, so I think we're making something out of to me, what is a molehill right now? Let them decide what courses they can close. They've got it worked out with the superintendents and other people. And believe me, the superintendents, if they're closed, they're gonna do maintenance because they're not bothered on those days. So, but I don't wanna see courses closed and we got a lot of play. I mean, then you have to open it back up. I just as soon let the golf department handle that for us.
I think the motion is trying to look for ways to not have an adverse effect on golf revenue, but at the same time, reduce expenses. And Diana, the fact that restaurants like Granada and DeSoto are now gonna be open for dinner probably is not impacted by whether the courses are closed or not. Let me finish, please. It's more, the bigger concern I would have is if other restaurants are affected during the normal days when those courses might be closed. But to Mike's point, we're already making a statement we're gonna close courses. What we're trying to do here is maybe increase the number of days. I agree that it makes sense not to close them on Fridays and Saturdays, those are the big days. But at the same time, publish a schedule so it's far in advance so everyone can plan around it. Given that, I support this amendment or this motion.
This motion does not say that we wouldn't be closing a golf course. It says, on just Sunday through Thursday. It doesn't state that.
That's why I said I support that contention you're making.
Okay.
That's not the motion that we have on the table.
Is that the amendment you want to make to this motion?
I would amend, there's not, because if I'm going to do this, I'd bring a whole different motion.
Okay, all right. You need a call to the question.
Okay, all right, so all those that are in favor of the motion that says, in order to provide a measure of relief to golf revenue requirements in 2020, the motion is that staff be directed to operate no more than 7 out of 8 golf courses each day during 2020 on a rotational basis. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed?
No.
The motion fails.
Okay? I would like to bring forth a motion that in order to provide a measure of relief to the golf, I'm going to read, whatever, that we have one golf course closed Sunday through Thursday and on a predictable schedule, and we close 2 golf courses Sunday through Thursday in January and February.
Okay, I would like to ask, Renee, would you read that motion back? Because I'm not sure I captured it exactly. Do you have it down?
I'm trying.
Okay.
The third motion to provide a measure of relief by closing 1 golf course Monday through Thursday on a predictable schedule.
Sunday.
Sunday.
Through
Oh,
Thursday.
Sunday.
Sunday through Thursday.
Third motion to provide a measure of relief by closing one golf course Sunday through Thursday on a predictable schedule, and 2 golf courses Sunday through Thursday, and it was a period of time January through February.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
The motion has been seconded, it's open for discussion. Do you want to speak to that any more than you already have?
I think
I've Okay.
given enough background.
Okay,
Here's a challenge I have with that motion. Why conceptually, I think it makes a lot of sense. What is it gonna do to the restaurateur at any given golf course that's not a POA course when there's no golfers? Because they rely on the income that comes off the golf revenue, although it's smaller in the winter. So if we took the people that run Cortez, or we took the people that run Isabella, they'd be dramatically impacted with that type of plan.
For the most part, those golf courses are closed in January and February a lot anyway because of weather conditions. They rely so heavily on weather conditions in January and February and the support of the community. And our community knows that those restaurants need their business. And generally speaking, the neighbors around those restaurants are going there and keeping them alive in those 2 bad months. And there again, it is a predictable schedule. So they are going to know in advance that they're not going to be open on a Tuesday or whatever.
Well, it's not a Tuesday you're talking about, it's the 4 of the 5 days of the week. Now, if I was a restaurateur and I was gonna find out that I'm gonna be closed potentially 1 to 3 months, that would impact my planning. And I surely, it's
You're not going to be closed for the entire month.
You are when you rotate them across the 3 months, aren't you?
It's 2 months.
2 months?
January, February is 2 months.
Madam Chair, may I speak to this? I'm in total agreement with Mike that we ought to leave the experts that handle this and allow them, please do not do that. We need to allow the CMEO, the golf director, we need to allow them to make these decisions. The last year, they made decisions all by themselves to find some revenue or to cut expenses. I believe that this kind of a motion gets down to micromanaging, and I don't believe we belong there.
any other discussion? Buddy, want to speak? Okay. The motion that I have, in order to provide a measure of relief to golf revenue requirements in 2020, the motion is that staff be directed to close one golf course Sunday through Thursday on a predictable basis, and 2 golf courses in January and February, Sunday through Thursday on a predictable basis. Do I generally have that right? Okay. Okay. All those in favor say yes. Those opposed say no.
No.
There's 4. That motion fails. Okay, we're back to the main motion on the budget. Is there any more discussion on the budget itself?
Okay, I guess I want to come back to what I said earlier on the
Fitness center.
fitness center. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I apologize, I know where it is, that's about all.
Can't hear you.
I said I know where it is, that's about all I know about it. I thought that Donna's explanation needs to be discussed, because it sounds to me like they put a lot of time into it, and I do take input from my wife on this, because she uses it just about every day. And she said that it would be a good idea to lower the yearly cost. We'll get more people to sign up.
We will, yep.
Just on this motion,
On this one, on
on the main motion. Well, first let me say I'm disappointed that neither of the two motions that Nancy presented passed. They were at a bare minimum what was required to make this proposed budget viable in my mind. As performance against several areas in the current budget have shown, there were significant expectations of significant expectations of revenue that weren't met. While I realize that we're close to a time when we need to approve the budget, I cannot support the proposed budget in all good conscience. Let's face it, we don't have enough money coming in, and it's not going to get fixed by a forecast that in my mind is not in line with the likely revenues. We should approve the 2020 fee structure today and at a minimum spend the next 30 days reworking the revenue forecast and expense side of the proposed budget. Again, I will oppose the motion to approve.
I have a parliamentary question.
You can address the chair. You can address the chair.
Chair, I have a parliamentary question.
Sure.
How do I go about modifying the fee schedule if I feel that the fee schedule needs an adjustment to reflect what we've heard from Donna and others regarding the fitness center?
You make a motion. You make a motion, whatever your motion is, we'll second it, we'll discuss it, and bring it back.
Okay. I have a motion. I would like to move that the fee schedule go back for the fitness center, go back to, I believe it would be budget version 3, and that the annual fee for the fitness center be set at $350 for members, and that we have the rolling 12-month option for that fee.
Second.
And there is a second to that motion. So fitness center fees revert to version 3, which is $350 annually for members and the rolling 12-month option. That's the motion and it's been seconded.
That's correct.
Okay, so discussion only on that topic.
I just have one thing to say. The rolling fee schedule is a separate item on here. Do you want to include it? Because that wasn't truly in question, I don't believe. I believe they're in agreement. The Recreation Fee Subcommittee is in agreement that the rolling fee schedule.
I just wanted to make sure that it was in the fee schedule.
Okay.
Okay, so we can modify the motion perhaps to say that the fitness center fee revert to version 3 at $350 per year for members. That's right, okay. And Mike, do you still second that motion now?
Second.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion then on that particular fee?
Question?
Yes, but
There are more fees involved in this than just that one.
So I have the fitness center, I have version 3 here in front of me, and you are correct. There are several fitness center fees that I believe the ones that were concerned is the only one that the board changed is, Diana, what you mentioned, which was the individual annual. That's the only one that in the next version then went back up. Plus,
It's all of the fitness center annuals because they're all proportional, broken down based on what the individual rate is. So it's
That's
this
right.
entire section on page 66.
so everything leads from that top one, and then it gets kind of filters down.
Okay, let me modify.
okay, well, let's appropriately deal with the motion that's before us. How do we dispense with that? You
I think I
withdraw?
can modify it.
No, you can take the motion back. I mean, you want to strike the motion.
I'll strike the
Make a new
motion and make a new motion.
Okay, the new motion.
So here is the current one.
I move
Yeah.
that we return to version 3 of the budget fee schedule for the annual fitness center fees. And we use the version 3 rates instead of the version 4 rates.
Okay, the motion is to return to version 3 fee schedule for the annual fitness center fees. Is there a second to that motion?
Second. third, fourth, whatever.
Okay, Mike has seconded it. Okay, any other discussion on that topic? Buddy, Tormy?
Sure. When is this board going to recognize that we can't keep cutting revenue and also cut expenses, cut the expenses our way out of the problem that's facing us? It isn't gonna work. And the fact of the matter is, Diana, we can have all the golf course and all the fitness centers and everything can be free to every property owner. As soon as the property owners vote for a $200 a month assessment. But until the meantime, we gotta pay the bills and we've gotta maintain the golf courses, the streets, the roads, and the water plant and every other part of this village that all of us love. We can't just keep not kicking the can down the road.
I understand your point, Tormy, but I also do not feel that when this was brought to go to version 3 to version 4, that I had all the facts in front of me. I do not feel that I had all of the studies that were done and all the time and effort that went into it. And if I'm going on the studies that are being done, I'm talking, we have now gone from, in version 3, that we should have annual revenue of $1,169,000 there, to version 4, that the expected annual revenue is going to be $1,130,000. So we had a decrease of $39,000, which is peanuts. We're dropping over pennies to pick up dimes here, or stepping over dollars to pick up pennies is what I meant to say. But your forecast is going the opposite way of the point you're trying to make. So, you know, this is why I feel that there was a lot of time and effort, as Donna presented in 3 minutes and 15 seconds, that went into this study that we did not take into account when we changed from version 3 to version 4, and I think that we should go back.
What do you think? I'm sorry, you should what?
I think that we should go back to version 3.
When are we going to stop the bleeding, board members?
When are we going to start dealing with expenses, Vice Chair?
Point of order. Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
I have a point of order with the board directors. You're not talking to each other. You're talking to the chair.
That's fine, but the Vice Chair called me out by name.
Likewise, you did him. So let's just stop it now while we're all good friends, right?
Okay.
I don't have any confidence in the version 3 budget that you're suggesting. It's got all the same problems that we still may have in version 4. And and approving a budget at version 3 level won't solve any problem, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I did not suggest that we approve version 3 budget. I suggested that my motion that is on the table, that has been seconded, that I'm calling for a vote on, is that the fee schedule for the fitness center be changed from version 4 to version 3 for annual passes.
Okay, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, those in favor of returning to version 3 fee schedule for the annual fitness center fees, say yes by raising your hand. Yes? Do I have that right, 2? Those opposed? 3. Okay, so the motion failed. We remain with version 4 fees for the fitness center. Annual fees for the fitness center. We are back to the main motion, right? Any other discussion on the main motion? I see no other comments on main motion, therefore ready to call the motion. Those in favor of moving to, of the motion to approve the 2020 budget and fee schedule, version 4 with no amendments, correct? We passed no amendments. Okay, version 4, which includes the items listed in the memo, signify by raising their hand and say yes.
Yes.
Say that again.
We're voting on the budget, the original motion.
All right, call for the vote.
I just did. I called for the voting, and I think I have Nancy, Buddy, Mike, do I have your vote in favor of the budget? This is the main motion. No amendments were passed.
And I'm not gonna vote.
Let's go.
No? Okay, those opposed to the motion to approve the 2020 budget and fee schedule version 4, signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
3 opposed. The budget did not pass.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we approve or not approve the fee schedule and revisit the budget as Tormy suggested earlier.
So 2 parts to that motion, or are you just making that we approve the fee schedule?
We're just approving or not approving the fee schedule, and we will visit the budget later.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? Okay, those in favor of approving the version 4 fee schedule, but postponing the budget approval for more discussion, signify by raising your right hand and say yes.
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 Those opposed? That motion passes 3-2. So we have an approved fee schedule. That is the version 4 fee schedule. That at least equips the staff to be able to make those changes, and the board will convene to discuss the budget further. Next item on the agenda is the Appeals Committee Fines Directive. Buddy Dixon.
I move to approve a directive that the Administrative Fines Appeals Committee shall not waive any additional fines until their charter and related processes are reviewed and revised by the Board of Directors.
Second.
The board wishes to develop a process as to how and when administrative fines are forgiven.
Okay, any discussion on this motion? Are we ready to vote? Those in favor of approving a directive that the Administrative Fines Appeals Committee shall not waive any additional fines until their charter and related processes are reviewed and revised by the Board of Directors, signify by raising your right hand and say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Somebody's phone. Okay, next item on the agenda, budgeted items. These are items that have previously been budgeted and require board approval. Item 14, the 2019 crack filling project, Tormy Campagna.
I move to authorize the CEO to execute a contract with Mitchell Asphalt Seal Coating for the planned street preservation projects charged by the unit price to be not exceed of $165,200. This contract provides the option to be renewed annually for up to 3 years with board approval obtained each year, not to exceed the approved budget spending limits.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. background, Tormy?
The crack filling will take place between the months of October through April annually. The crack filling prevents moisture and dirt from penetrating the subbase, which can undermine the pavement and cause potholes. This is the least expensive method of street preservation and is preferably done during the cooler months of the year when the cracks are at the widest point to help seal the road surface. The work term is included in the FYI. The work item is included in the FY 2019 budget and is part of the operational 70511 Land and Street Maintenance budget. Bids were solicited from 4 vendors and 3 vendors responded. The bids ranged from $162,500 to $180,000 to $200,000. Mitchell Asphalt Seal Coating was the lowest bidder. The total budget for this area, the 70511, in the capital line is $1,820,000, of which $212,000 is designated for crack sealing.
Okay, open it up for any discussion.
This is pretty straightforward. The board got an email from somebody saying, why don't we use the crack sealer during the summertime? That's the one time you don't want to be doing crack sealing. This is good news, so I just wanted to respond to the email that you don't do, concrete doesn't do real well in hot weather, or asphalt either one.
Thank you. Any other comments on this motion?
I just want to add that this doesn't, for the public's benefit, this does not mean that our own department doesn't use we have additional crack sealing with our own machinery and equipment and people. This is just an outside vendor to do even more work.
Okay, any other commentary?
Just to reiterate that this was a budgeted item, we're just merely ratifying the expenditure at this point in time.
Because it exceeds CDL authority, yeah. Okay, so those in favor of the motion to authorize the CEO to execute a contract with Mitchell's Asphalt Seal Coating for the planned street preservation projects charged by the unit price not to exceed $165,200. This contract provides the option to be renewed annually up to 3 years with board approval, obtained each year, not to exceed the approved budgeted spending limits. Those in favor, raise your right hand, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next item up is a motion on Phase 2 and 3 wastewater treatment plant improvements. Tormy.
I move to authorize the CEO to execute a project construction agreement with ETI Services Incorporated, number 1 bidder. I think low price, the only bidder maybe, for the planned maintenance improvements to the Cedar Creek and Mill Creek wastewater treatment plants for the low amount of $816,039.25 with a project completion time expected to be within 180 calendar days from the date of the notice to proceed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Tormy, the background on this, please.
This is a long read. The project funding will come from the 2019 and 2020 approved fiscal budgets, although the 2021 is yet to be approved, and is expected to begin by the end of November 2019. The budget in 2019 was $600,000. The planned budget for 2020 is $290,000 for a total project potential cost of $890,000. The proposed improvements to each wastewater treatment plant and the associated budget year's funding are summarized as follows. Mill Creek wastewater treatment plant rotating disc filter, 19, walkway handrails, 19, mud well overflow piping, 19, and UV disinfection unit, 2020. In the Cedar Creek wastewater treatment, clarifier drive 2 replacement in 19, bulk chemical feed system in 19. The prioritized improvements are in accordance with the wastewater treatment plant master plan provided by McLean Engineers. This project will contribute towards the completion of the consent administration order plan for the Mill Creek wastewater treatment, enabling it to comply with management and permitted chlorine and copper discharge residuals by removing and replacing existing chloration and dechloration disinfection process with a new ultraviolet light disinfection system. This project will also remove and replace 2 failing sand filters and 1 new rotating disc filter that can be managed more than the 2 in place. The Mill Creek water wastewater treatment and new UV system will eliminate the use of 2 dangerous chemicals, chlorine and sulfur dioxide gas, to provide the operators a safer work environment and provide more natural, eco-friendly treated water discharge to the receiving system. At the Cedar Creek wastewater treatment plant, a new drive on the second clarifier will be installed to bring the clarifiers up to the optimal working level. A new bulk chemical feed system will be installed that will save money on the chemical cost and provide a safer, more spacious work environment for operators. The project will start in November 2019, is expected to complete within 120 calendar days. Bids are solicited with 4 vendors. The bidder, McLean, was the lowest price bidder at $816, with the other bidders ranging all up to $1,444,000.
Just one clarification, it's 180 calendar days.
No?
That would be complete in 180.
Okay, I must have misspoke.
As written. Any discussion on this motion?
I'm just glad Tormy had to read that instead of me.
You could have just said we're fixing our sewer.
I just want a point of clarification because the motion and the background is written as if there has been a 2020 approved budget and there has not been. And so I want to make sure that obviously you have the authority today to direct this, and we can update our document here, but I don't want there to be any confusion. This was written as a motion that took 2 years, one of which is not approved.
Thanks for that clarification. However, the motion itself does not speak to the 2020 budget, does it not? So we
Well, it
could
has
have-
the total amount,
It does have the total amount,
$816,000, so I want
Yeah.
to make sure that we're clear on
I
that.
got that. Any discussion on that or any other point with regard to the motion? Okay, so the motion is to authorize the CEO to execute a project construction agreement with ETI Services Incorporated, bidder 1, for planned maintenance improvements to the Cedar Creek and Mill Creek wastewater treatment plants for the low bid amount of $816,039.25 with a project completion time expected within 180 calendar days from the date of notice to proceed. Those in favor, raise your right hand and say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We have one last item of current business that was moved from new business. It's the proposed revisions to the Governance Committee Charter. Tormy Campagna.
This must be, Madam Chairman, my day in the box on motions. I move to amend the Governance Committee Charter by revising Section 3, Organization and Appointment, to read as follows. The committee shall consist of a committee chair elected annually by the board from among the directors, and 2 additional elected board members appointed by the committee chair. The CEO as a non-voting committee member and 2 non-board member property owners. In accordance with bylaws, Article 12, Section 4, Item 1, subcommittees may be established to advise the Governance Committee on various duties and responsibilities in this charter.
Is there a second to this motion? Okay, any discussion? Okay, the motion is to amend the Governance Committee Charter by revising, Section 3, Organization and Appointment, to read as follows. The committee shall consist of a committee chair, elected annually by the board from among the directors, 2 additional elected board members appointed by the committee chair, and the CEO. The CEO is a non-voting committee member, and 2 non-board member property owners. In accordance with bylaws, Article 12, Section 4, Item 1, subcommittees may be established to advise the Governance Committee on various duties and responsibilities in this charter. All those in favor, raise their right hand and say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed? The motion carries 4-1. We now turn to new business. First up, our board member comments. Let me start with Diana.
I'm disheartened by the budgeting process. We had a budget ad hoc committee. I'm not sure that we gave them full justice for all the work that they have done, and the fact that their report is not out to the public, that disappoints me. It is this process has fully reiterated my opinion of the need for a finance committee. I fully believe that we cannot just look at revenue, that we have to look at expenses. I commend the staff for the tremendous job that they have done this year in stepping up to the plate, or coming up to the batter's box, or whatever you want to call it, in reducing expenses as much as they possibly can. But when I see what I call SG&A expenses, and I see administrative costs, the administration division, the innovation division, and the marketing division, that their total operating expenses that we have currently are looking at right now take 27 cents of every dollar of assessment revenue, net revenue that we have coming in from there. Something's wrong, and we gotta fix it.
Thank you.
Please don't do that. Please don't, please.
Nancy.
Thank you for addressing Madam Chair when I ask you to. Appreciate that. I want to thank the staff for the incredible number of times they've looked at this budget and revised it. Poor Stacy helped me out here, 2,662 revisions
Now, yes.
before we even saw it. Okay, they've worked hard on this budget, and I'm hoping that we can come up with something within a very short amount of time to approve the budget as written. Thank you.
Mike.
Yeah, we do need to come up with something in a very short amount of time. I just want to talk a little bit about golf. The member guest tournament we ended up having 3 new property owners come out of that. I think that's good. We had 2 superintendents selected to the Arkansas Board of Directors Golf Course Superintendents Organization. I think that's good for us. It was Keith and Donald, and I think Keith is at Granada and Donald at Magellan. And we are going to start rating our courses. Granada is scheduled to be done on the 6th of November, and Ponce will be re-rated on the 11th of November. And thank you to the staff too for all they've done in putting this budget together. Budgets are never easy when you got a lot of different departments. They all got different ideas and different things coming together, and I'm sure that there was a lot of discussion. Thank you.
Buddy.
Well, first of all, I really want to, as everybody else has said, I want to thank staff for everything they've done to help with this budget. I do hope that we can get together and get this budget finalized, because they need it, and need it as quickly as we can do it. I want to go out a step for a minute or two. The ACC has a new member. He and his wife are here. Kenneth, would you mind standing up? Kenneth Gordon is a new member of ACC. We welcome him. The next thing I want to do is, we've had a lot of clapping and booing and everything else, but just a minute of joy. Tonight, once again, Buddy's Buffet. Now, hold on, Diamond, hold on. Buddy's Buffet at the DeSoto Club, it's normally $12.95, it's $10.95. We've got a good crowd coming. Wine is only $5 a glass, and I will be there at 5 o'clock. Welcome you, and any questions or whatever you have, but Buddy's Buffet tonight at the DeSoto Club.
Madam Chair, may I have a moment?
I think under the circumstances, that's appropriate.
Oh, no, she got it. Madam Chair, I would extend my welcome to all of you here that realize that tonight is Dining with Diana at Granada. Nobody told me about $5 wine, but I assume that the same program is extending to the restaurant where I also will be at 5 o'clock to dine with you. And please come out and enjoy the fried chicken.
Thank you. Okay. Norman.
It would seem to me that we would need someone to count heads at these two fits. So that we
Show me
make,
the money.
yeah, so we make sure we know who the winner was. Like-
We're all winners, Tormy.
Yeah.
Like the others on the board, I appreciate all the hard work the staff did. This was a challenging budget, and it may still be a little bit, but we're going to come together on it. Don't lose hope, because it'll happen. And so I really appreciate your hard work. I have one plea here. We have got somewhere between 10 and 12 openings on committees. And we desperately need smart, and most everyone in our whole population is smart, people involved in these committees to move forward with a lot of particularly important things. And in the case of one in particular, that's the Public Services Committee, they're down 4 people out of the 12 they are supposed to have. This creates a real problem for them doing their job in assisting Jason and his people in highlighting the areas in the village that need help. People with some level of engineering background would be advantageous because it's an engineering-oriented business that Jason's in. But I would ask that all of you, both in the room that are property owners and those watching us live, think about that and put some applications in because we need the people in all of our committees desperately.
Thank you. Okay, and my comments, I have 2 comments that I'd like to make, and I will also extend my appreciation to staff today. Clearly wasn't the outcome perhaps that we had hoped for in terms of an approved budget, but we will stick with it and we'll get it done for you in quick order. I have a couple comments to make. One is that the personnel matter that was made public in August has been fully investigated and reviewed by board members, and the matter is now closed. And second, the board has decided to leave the current board vacancy open until the next board is seated in 2020, when the normal election process will fill the full 7 seats. So I wanted to make those 2 comments, and we're ready now to hear from the audience. The sheet I have, Tom Amon wanted to talk about the ad hoc committee. Tom?
Cindy, what about Jeff?
Jeff was the one.
Yeah.
He's on here too. Oh, he was the one. So was Tom. So was Tom. So was, yes. Yeah. All right.
Okay, we're good. Thanks.
I'm Tom Ament, and I live at 20 in Trottle Way. This will be brief, but after watching this morning, I can believe it's even more important. In recent years, there has been a lot said about fiduciary responsibilities of the board and management to we, the property owners, dash corporation. I have read the essence of the report of the Ad hoc 2020 Operating and Capital Budget Committee. Their review and recommendations are outstanding, and we all owe them a big thank you. During my time on the Research and Special Projects Committee, we tried to follow or encourage the exact same processes they have recommended to you. I believe a finance committee should be established as quickly as possible, and it should report directly to the board of directors. Failure to do that will be a real neglect of the fiduciary responsibilities of the board and management to we, the property owners. Also, quick action on the other recommendations should be implemented as quickly as possible. Frankly, I was surprised that these normal business practices and procedures were not already in place. Once again, it proves to me the board of directors must be more attentive to daily operations to ensure safe business practices are used throughout the year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Next up, Sue Sutley, you wanted to speak about committee recommendations. Could I ask that cell phones be turned off? I think 3 times now we've heard it during this meeting. Please turn off cell phones. Sue, welcome.
Hi, thanks. My name's Sue Sutley, and I live at 30 Linder Way. I'll piggyback on Mr. Ament. We didn't even speak, but I'm wondering when you will act on the Budget Ad Hoc Committee's recommendation for a Finance Committee. Not as a sub of a sub of a sub, but one reporting directly to the board. I'm also wondering the recommendations from the Marketing Subcommittee, that marketing needs to come out of the shadows and be a consolidated team. Since Mr. Tormay just said we're in need of people to serve on committees, perhaps your actions on your part as the board might encourage some of us to serve. However, what I witnessed today with the report of the Rec Committee is not very encouraging. I'd also, after being at the last few board meetings, I'd also like to encourage you to appoint a parliamentarian other than a board member. No offense, Ms. Luring, but as a property owner, I'd like your full attention focused on the business at hand rather than on Robert's Rules of Order. As for that, I have one question. We seem to pat ourselves on the back for increased revenue each year in golf or whatever department. And I'm curious as to, is that an increased revenue for usage? Or is that an increased revenue simply because fees went up? And if you look at the graphs, I think I know the answer. Usage has gone down as fees have gone up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, Jeff. I can't read your last name, Jeff.
Griffin.
Griffin. Oh, thank you. Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Jeff Griffin, 32 Malaga Way. I'm here to ask the assistance of the administration. There is a rumor going around that's spreading faster than a California wildfire. What I'm asking is that I've been hearing rumors that the governing slash employees of Hot Springs Village is encouraging fishermen to take undersized bass out of the lakes and discard them by either throwing them on the bank or throwing them into the trash. I'd like to let people know, inform people that underneath Arkansas Fish and Game Regulation 05-21, it's called wanton wastem, is against a violation. It would be a code 01-00-3. And so the reason I bring it up is because over a dozen people I've talked to here recently, they have all put the POA's fingerprints all over it, saying that it's being encouraged and promoted by the POA. And I'd like for the board to use all means possible to promote and educate people that this is a violation of Arkansas Fish and Game Regulation. And that was my concern, that our fingerprints are on something that is a rumor, that I would like for it to use its force of medias to inform people that that is against the law, and so we'd be better stewards of our resources. And so that was my only concern, that we could get your assistance to educate the public of this policy. It's 05-21, and people would be cited with this violation, which is a Class 2 violation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, and I know there's staff here that probably could directly answer your question as soon as we adjourn.
Right.
Is that, would you be willing
I'd
to
be
chat with
willing
them
to.
about that? Great.
I just wanted to see if we can get the public to be sure that we educate people properly that that's in violation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have on here, but I think I might have seen somebody try to come up and, did they, is there, Renee, would you kindly bring me, if there's more that need to speak? Okay, and Jeff just did, okay.
It's up to you.
Okay, up to me. Okay, Donna, you want to come back up? You want to speak on the budget?
I only wanted to say thank you for the consideration of the change in the fees. Thank you, Diana and Mike, for bringing that up. And recognize that now that the fees are approved and the budget is not, that the only way to handle the overstated income in some areas and understated in others is to control expenses. Obviously, is to control expenses. So the public should be aware, the residents should be aware that the way to control expenses is in recreation are things like not having lifeguards, not having classroom instruction. So the greatest expense is personnel, and uncontrolled expenses that are electricity and water. So people who have not commented on this budget yet, up till now, should seriously be looking at those numbers and provide input. It is disappointing we don't have more people here or at the budget review meetings. It's very disappointing. 39 people or 30 people, 12 people, and that's kind of disappointing at what such a big, big concern we have for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Kurt, did you want to speak? You don't have a topic?
It's just about the Congress of New Urbanism. Congress of New Urbanism, Comprehensive Master Plan.
Can't hear you.
Which is good. Hello?
Briefly. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Kirk Denyer. I live at 1 Soga Place. Congratulations to the members, management's Congress of New Urbanism, Comprehensive Master Plan of indoctrinating or eliminating board directors.
Kirk, you already said that. We're ready to move on.
Well, I wasn't allowed to finish it.
Yeah, you were.
That was about the budget. This is about a different
But you're
subject.
repeating yourself. What new do you have to share with us today?
Okay. The last board of directors who were elected were indoctrinated by the committee or whatever it was when they were elected. And their promises that they made have changed considerably. One of them voted to allow the governance committee to continue to operate in violation of the bylaws.
Kirk, you are repeating yourself again. I'm going to ask you to stand down. Melinda, you're welcome to come to the podium. Well, I'm sorry, Melinda Noble. There's a couple Melindas in the audience I happen to know. Okay, Melinda Noble.
I'm Melinda Noble, 7 Tiempo Place. I just want to go along with what Diana had to say on the budget. As an accountant, you know, revenues are hard to pin down. Expenses are relatively easy, especially if you look at salaries. And all you have to do is look at our administrative costs, and we are so bloated in salaries, and that's something you have 100% control over. And we need to take control, if of nothing else, we need to take control of the salaries in this village. Also, just one little thing, in the Village Voice, I don't know how many
Melinda,
people
could you
get
pull the
it.
microphone to your mouth there?
Okay. I don't know how many people get the Village Voice. I know I do. And in yesterday's paper, there was a little blurb from the managing editor and publisher. Due to legal liability from the Hot Springs Village Voice, will no longer be accepting letters to the editor that refer or hint to the CEO's salary and other terms of her contract. I'm wondering what precipitated this. I mean, has there been legal action brought, or?
We're not engaging here in that, but if you want to contact the Voice, I think they would be happy to answer your question.
Okay, well, who do we submit our letters to? Do we submit them now to Leslie, or to you, or to the newspaper? Before, you know, I'm assuming they're all gonna have to be checked over, because we wouldn't want anybody to be upset. I mean, I'm just asking. I think this is a legitimate question. You know, if there's gonna be legal action brought, we all know who's gonna be paying for that legal action if it is in fact brought.
Okay, we don't engage in
And the board
dialogue
has
here.
nothing to.
I've responded, contact the Voice, on their policies.
Thank you.
Thank you. There being no other business on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.